there, my sweet friends. I hope you are all well. We're going to be creating another project with those white shipping envelopes that we used in last week's tutorial. And they are super affordable, and they're a perfect way to get a shortcut to the fun part of crafting. And so we're going to be using those envelopes, papers from my stash, and the spring is in the Air Printable from my shop. And so this is a perfect little mini, and it has all of these beautiful pattern papers that coordinate with the printable, and it also has pockets on the top that hold tabbed inserts. So this is going to have loads of room for your pictures and journaling, and it is so fast and easy to make. If that sounds good to you, then stick around and we'll make it together. Okay, so here is that envelope, and like I mentioned last week, I did get these from Amazon. They were a pack of 100, and they were just less than $12, so I'll make sure and link those in the description below. And the thing that I like most about them, obviously, is that they're white, so I can use these to create some bases and get to the fun part of the crafting. For these envelopes, they do have a 6x9 size, and it is a self-sealing top. And for this project, I do want that, so I will seal that up, and then when I cut it, I'll make 2 pockets. In our previous video, we needed sleeves so that they were open at the bottom, but for this one, we do want these to hold some inserts that we want to have. And so I will bring this to my cutter, and I will cut that off at 4, and then I will turn it and then cut it at 4. So we're going to wind up with pockets that are 6 inches high by 4 inches wide. Now, I will take 3 of these envelopes and cut them each into 2. So I'll have a total of 6 of these pockets, and I have prepared them already. I'll just set those aside for a moment so that I can show you how we're going to bind these. And I have a piece of 65-pound weight cardstock. It's cut to be 4 inches high and then 12 inches wide. And we're going to use this as an accordion style so that we can insert our pages into them and then have this open as a regular book. So it will have a 1-inch score line all the way down. So we're going to wind up with this full piece of 12-inch wide paper scored at 1 inch and then folded. I have my double-sided adhesive on the back piece here, and then I'll skip one and add the adhesive, and then skip one and then add the adhesive. And then I'll repeat that process all the way down. We're going to wind up putting some adhesive on the outside so that we can attach our cover, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now, the thing you want to notice for this album is instead of building the whole base and then going in with our pattern paper, we need to think about each layer as we're putting it down. So we're going to go back and forth between the pages and the pattern paper. That way everything is sealed up and added at just the right time. I also want to mention that this is a really good place for your 2 glue combo because you really do want this to be well secured. So I'll take the backing off of the back here, and then I'll add my top bow. I'll be very careful to keep it within that border. You don't want any of this squeezing out and making a mess. So just a little bit of that wet adhesive. For the back page, we can add it directly to this accordion fold, and I just want to bring that fold up so that I can set the corner of my envelope directly into that. That way I will be sure that that will fold properly on the outside. Now here comes the part where we're going to start adding our pattern paper. This is going to be very easy to remember. All of the pattern papers are the same size, so we're just needing one set of measurements, and that is 3 7/8 of an inch high by 5 7/8 of an inch wide, and that'll just give us a nice border of that envelope, and that'll be a solid border to keep the busy patterns separate. Now you could consider adding a cardstock border as well, but it might get a little too chunky for that, and I think it will look just fine without it. Another thing to remember is since you're working from the back, keep your papers in order from the back to the front. That way you'll keep everything in the position that you want it. And so I'm just choosing some pretty kind of a blue. Actually, this came from my stash, as all the papers did today. And this is Christmas paper, but it doesn't look like it because it doesn't have any of the Christmassy icons. It's just a pretty blue paper with some sheet music. Now, here is where we're going to add the paper to the envelope before we bring it to the accordion. So of course, it isn't going to matter what side is front or back on these because they're all going to be sealed in. But you do want to put your pattern paper here before you add it because it will be sandwiched in between the page and the accordion. So you want to just add that paper now and then add your accordion to the spine. So we're just going to continue to work along. This is a very simple, and I think this is a great use for your leftover 6x6 paper pads that we all seem to gather. And then also it's a good use for 12x12 paper because you're going to create all of the pages here and not wind up with a lot of offcuts. So just continue to work along and utilize your 2-glue combo for this page. Of course, we have to flip that over so that we have our pages matching. Now, you don't have to do that. I always like to match my 2-page layouts, but if you're going through your stash and you're getting stuff used up, you definitely don't have to follow that rule. Just make sure that you're using up what you have so you can make room for new supplies. And so once again, I'm just holding that up and resting that down into the score line, and that way I know it will fold properly. So now we can open this and you can see that page did need to be in here before it was added so that that was sandwiched in between. Now I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process. So for the right hand pages, we're going to have our pattern paper added directly to the back of the envelope that we just added. And so I'm going to alternate between a beautiful blue pattern, and that's just to coordinate with the images that I chose for this book. And so I'm going to pick some more vintagey yellows and then those beautiful blues. And remember, we have to add this to the envelope before we add it to the accordion. And this is going to be the other page for a 2-page spread. So I'll flip that over and fold over the next accordion. And this is going to be pretty simple going down, just repeating that same process until you run out of pages. Now, this is going to be a really great group activity because all of this cutting is pretty simple, and also a great way to utilize some of your Christmas or Halloween collections, those holiday collections, and you can utilize the cut aparts for the focal images for your pages. So consider just going through your older collections and creating an album from those. So I'm just going to keep working along until I have this done. I will just speed up this process, and then I'll give you a little music to listen to, and then I'll be back when we have this all ready to add the additional layers. While I'm adding this last page on, which will ultimately be our first page, I will remind you that occasionally when you are working with a mass-produced product like these envelopes, there is a chance that they will not be cut exactly precisely, and you can decide that you can just embrace that imperfection, which is what I'm doing. Some of the borders are a little bit smaller than others, and that's going to be okay with me. The trade-off is that I can create the base for this very quickly and easily, and it is a really budget-friendly project. So for me, that is definitely a trade-off. Now you see we have added our 6 envelopes to the accordion, and because one of these on the front and back will act as a cover, we're going to wind up with 5 sets of 2 pages on the inside. And now we can think about adding our cover. So you really want to add some additional layers of the cardstock for the front and the back, just so that you have a nice sturdy cover. And we're going to go directly on to this last tab. So I'll just go ahead and pull that backing off now. Don't pull all this tape off at once, or it will be very difficult to manage all of those layers. Just do it as you're working along. And I have my additional pieces of cardstock. This is 65 pound weight. I've cut it to be 8 inches high by 6 inches wide, and then I scored it in half so that I can fold it over. And this is going to give me my double layer of thickness here and a nice clean finished edge on the top. And so I have just added that with my double-sided tape, and then I'm going to add this to my book using my 2 glue combo. So I did already have my tape added here. And so I'll just pull that. And we need to just sandwich this tab in between those layers. So of course, everything will be nice and tidy on the spine. Now, flipping that over so that I can get a better angle and see that I'm getting this on straight. And so this is going to act as our front cover. I will repeat that for the back. Now I've got that back cover on as well. I definitely think I will be visiting Amazon to see what other colors I can find these 6x9 envelopes in, because it is definitely a game changer for this style of crafting. So now what I want to do is add my ribbon trim before I add the pattern paper for the outside cover, so that I can sandwich that trim in between the layers and keep it well secured. And so this is just a smoke blue taffeta, and I picked that up from a really reasonable ribbon. Not only is this a perfect color to coordinate with my pattern paper and my printable, but it does cut very easily, and if you cut it at an angle, it won't fray. So you'll be assured that it won't get stringy on the ends. And so I'm just going to cut that, leaving myself enough for a generous bow, and then I'll tack that into place temporarily while I work on the other layers, so that I'm sure it will wind up exactly where I want it to. And I can just stick that down with more of my double-sided adhesive. If you hear that walking on the stairs, that is the tech hubby, and he is home for spring break, and he's working on some projects around the house, so it's nice to have him here. He was just down in the basement playing Angry Birds on his Oculus, so he's kind of been part of our production team today, so that's fun to have him home. Everybody say hi to Tech Hubby in the comments below. So let's go ahead and just add that pattern for the front and back cover. Now, if you hear that other noise, that would be our sump pump going off. And it's always an adventure to film in your downstairs area. So now I have my cover picked, and I got the same pattern for the front and the back. I've also added a little strip of the same blue that was on our first set of pages. It just worked out to be a nice little layering pattern, and so I wanted to incorporate that as well. And now you can see we have captured that trim in place, and we've given ourselves a beautiful cover. Let's just flip this over now and then add the pattern on to the back, and that will capture that trim on the back. Just pulling that taut, and then I'll add my paper. Okay, so now you can see when we flip this open, we can get it flat onto our work surface, and that will be very helpful when we're finishing up our album with our additional layers. And you see I have sort of alternated between those blues and that pretty yellow. So now I want to add some additional details on the inside here. And now I'm going to be able to utilize that printable. I've got the rectangle shapes cut out from the cutter parts, and then I went through with my envelope punch board and used that corner rounder just to cut off those corners, and that gives it a little bit of extra detail. You can also consider coming in with some stickles and adding details there as well. And so I'm just going to add a doily. This is a recollection doily, and I cut some just crisp white cardstock with that to break up a little bit of this busy pattern. I'm putting this on the left-hand side because I have that additional piece of the accordion on this side. So this will give me a larger piece over here when I want to add my pictures and my other layering. So let's go ahead and just add these as we work along. And because we have 5 sets of pages inside, I can use 5 of the images from the printable on the inside of the book. Now, let's go ahead and work on our cover. Once again, I do have my printable ready, and this time I did add it to a piece of thick cardstock and pop that up on some dimensional spacers. I've also added that corner round detail in some of the stickles, and I'm going to put that on another one of those doilies, but this time I'm focusing toward the right hand side of this page because I do have a fairly generous size flower arrangement created, and I'm going to set that image in at a little bit of an angle because I don't want to accidentally cover up any of the important details on this. And so I took my offcut from this page and die cut some flowers from that, just some layered flowers. I finished those with some double head stamens and also more of that beautiful taffeta ribbon. There's die cut foliage, some netting, and some loopy twine bows. And you see that is just perfect size to work on to the left hand side here, and that helps to balance that image. Of course, you do want to add this with hot glue. Got a couple little details left for the cover, but remember that this has those pockets in, so we can create some inserts to go inside. I've got my 110-pound cardstock cut to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's just slightly less wide than those pockets so that they will go in and out easily. And it's just slightly taller so that when I cut my tab portion, that will stick out over the top. So let's get that envelope punch board, and I'll just line that up to the very corner and punch the first one, and then I'll slide that down till it meets the 2 3/4. So now we have our tab created, but we need to remove the excess paper. So I've just got my trimmer here, and I'll line this up so that the cutting blade will fit right into where that indentation is. And I'll line that up here. I can see that it is exactly where I want it. And then I will trim down until I can hear it go through that notch. A little bit more, and that will remove that other portion. And now that tab will stick out over the top. So if you have nice handwriting, you could label this. If you had a Dymo or some kind of a word sticker from a collection, that would be perfect. And so I want to alternate my tabs so that they show on the top. You see, I'll do them on the right and the left and the right and the left. And see, I have this wound up so that the last insert will go on the left. And so now I have my pattern paper here, and it is cut to be 3 3/4 by 5 3/8, and that will be centered on the bottom portion below the tab. Now, if you want to cover the back as well, you could consider doing that, but it's a nice place to add some journaling or some additional pictures if you want. There's plenty of room in this for all kinds of fun layering. So let's just add that here. Now, once we get these into that book, it is going to be so much more thick and sturdy. So let's just work from the back to the front and get these inserts added as we work our way forward. And now you can see why we didn't want to use that extra layer of colorful cardstock, because that would just really wind up making this too bulky to function properly. So here is the last tab insert. Now you can see how they will extend above the top, and look how much thickness that added to our book. Let's just go ahead and tie this now, and then we'll add those final details for the cover. Just a simple little bow here to keep everything in place. I do have some pretty little butterfly charms, and we're just going to add these overlapping the edge of that raised printable. And of course I'll do that with my hot glue. That string down into the glue. Remove the excess. And then I'll cover those cut ends with a pretty button. And then last but not least, I'm adding these pretty little sequins with my Tombow. And that's going to be it for today. I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Remember, you can check the description for links for the products I mentioned today, as well as all of our socials. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye!